Alright everyone, we start off today with a little bit of legacy media gaslighting. The New York Times releasing material regarding the IRS, and I have a feeling, although it's just a hunch here, so don't call me a conspiracy theorist, New York Times. I have a theory here that when the New York Times, CNN, and similar groups claim that the White House is openly coordinating with them, we got word of this back at the beginning of the year from Oliver Darcy himself from CNN, is coordinating with the White House to release more positive economic news, and the IRS is basically an economic function. Why do I get the feeling that this particular piece was guided, was maybe gone over edited a little bit by the Biden administration before it went to press? Link in the description, archived of course. This is to a Fox coverage of the New York Times article. The New York Times taking aim at people who promote conspiracy theories with regards to the IRS expansion. Now, the idea behind the New York Times in fact-checking is basically Biden said X, and therefore X is true, and therefore nothing else can be true. They just defer to the White House itself and say, well, the White House claims that this new bill will lower inflation. Ergo, if you're claiming it won't lower inflation, then you are a conspiracy theorist, or MAGA, you're extreme or something. I like how they're targeting specifically Republicans with this. You do not need to be a Republican to not want to throw more money to the IRS. I think you would find a considerable proportion of Democrats don't want to expand the IRS either. I like how they're complaining about not having the tools to do all the audits and stuff like that. Dude, automate it. Use computers. I'm sure that you can figure it out. Why don't you have your friends in big tech set something up so you don't even need as many agents? You could probably shrink the current workforce at the IRS by half again and replace them with a supercomputer. It'd be cheaper, I think. It would certainly be more fair. It would be more honest. And then they also claim it's a conspiracy theory that the IRS could be misused in any way. Joe Biden assures us, says the New York Times, that the IRS expansion won't have anything to do with auditing people who aren't rich, and there will be no political targeting or any of these things. The problem is, if you look at basic statistics with regards to who gets audited, mostly it's middle and upper middle class people. They're not making $400K a year. They're not even making the $200K a year, the dumbed down number that the Biden administration later had to walk things back to for certain married individuals as far as household income. So if you're making $70K a year, $80K a year, maybe $150K a year, that's the sweet spot. That's where most of the auditing happens. Not with the 1%ers. Certainly not with the 1% of the 1%, the donor classers. They make up a tiny proportion of audits. Part of this isn't political. Part of it is, if you want to audit someone, it makes more sense to go after someone who can't hire a lawyer fresh off of their former $10 million a year job at Exxon, who went to Harvard and has 2 PhDs. It might be a little bit more difficult to persecute that individual who has the time, who has the leisure, who is used to being able to go anywhere in the world, say fuck it, and buy a private jet. It's a lot easier to go after someone who owns a small business, or is independent content creator and happens to make a reasonable amount of money streaming or making videos or something like that. And before we take even remotely seriously the absolute fable that is the New York Times claim that this will not be persecutorial in nature, I've got 2 words for you. Lois Lerner. There was already a big scandal years ago under the Obama administration, Obama being, formerly VP Biden's boss. I think that he learned well from his former sensei. There's already a precedent for the IRS being weaponized for political purposes. The IRS was slow-walking and denying certain tax-free statuses to both progressive, actual left of center, and conservative groups repeatedly, and there were thousands of cases of this. By the way, we never got any full disclosure with regards to what happened. Lois Lerner gets canned, and that was basically as high as it went. The IRS was used for political purposes at that time to deny nonprofit status to certain activistic firms which ran out of the lame stream of neoliberal and neocon. And by the way, by conservative groups, that really meant Tea Party, Ron Paul Revolution, etc. at the time, proto-MAGA populist movements. Nobody cares if the neocon Incorporated PAC gets a nonprofit status. Nobody cares. That's perfectly fine. A group that's loosely associated with Mitch McConnell is not going to be denied by anyone in D.C. Group associated with the Clinton family or something. They're fine. But cop block and shit like that gets mass banned and hammered by the IRS. I can guarantee you, and this is a guarantee, not a speculation, that the IRS will be weaponized against people based on their politics. I can guarantee that the bulk of new audits will not affect the super rich. That's part of the entire selling point of the Stop Inflation Act, or whatever the fuck it was called, which is disingenuous too. Part of the entire principle is that several things that you've invested in make a return over time. Nothing happens immediately. You're deep in the hole. You're deep in the red. 10, 20 years later, you hope to have broken even. Partially by funding EVs, domestic production of those, solar panels, etc., to outflank China. It's not going to work. There's an entire separate story right now that is a bumblefuck of bullshit with regards to solar panel subsidies for middle-class families that are already taking out credit lines at the moment just to buy groceries. Yes, I'm sure that they're willing to drop that extra $20K into getting a solar panel array because they'll get some of that back over a few years. I'm sure that this would be considered a wise fiscal decision by many solid middle-class homeowners. Yeah, just wait till the housing crisis hits. BlackRock will buy up all those improved properties and, then those other people will be completely screwed up the ass. The fact is that this was part of the selling point of the bill as far as making it functionally saleable. That is, you'd make the money back because you're auditing the big boys. You've got more auditors now, and you can go after those evil billionaires that Biden and Bernie and all these other morons keep talking about. But that's not who's going to be gone after. Maybe a handful of them. That's wonderful. You recouped $1 billion that was skeeved on taxes. You just removed the overhaul of the carried interest loophole. So how are you going to make this bill, in the end, even pay for itself? The fact is it's not. It's pork barrelism. The IRS gets expanded. That was, I think, the main point of this bill in order to persecute people. It's not a conspiracy theory. That's gaslighting. It has already fucking happened before. It's not going to mainly affect the evil billionaires or anything like that. I think that was the main point. And the second is Cylinder 2.0. Much like with the infrastructure bill, which was also hundreds of billions of dollars for pet projects by the donor class and politically connected, this is basically the same thing. Calling it any form of victory for the middle class or anything like that, expecting it to reduce inflation, of course, is completely asinine. If anything, it's likely to start going back up again over the next few months, especially now that you will get a Putin price hike thanks to the shortage of fertilizer that all the farmers suffered for so long. Yeah, that's not going to affect the price of meat, by the way, considering that meat is totally not fed U.S. agricultural products like excess corn on a constant basis and now cost twice as much. That's not going to affect anything. It's not going to affect canneries. It's not going to affect the fucking ethanol that's pumped into your gas supply. It won't affect anything. Don't worry, proles, go back to sleep. And don't worry, the IRS is being more than doubled in size. And they're buying them a bunch of weapons and shit like that and advertising job positions, but you have to be willing to carry a gun and use lethal force on a regular basis. It's because they intend to bust down more doors at 3 a.m. for unknown reasons. I would think, by the way, can I posit something? Unless you think that there's some sort of international crime syndicate laundering money in some suburban home, why do you need to do a no-knock raid on someone who, if they are guilty of the crime you suspect them of, would still be considered a non-violent criminal? Oh my God, he underpaid $200 on his taxes. Let's pay a dozen brawny dudes double overtime in order to go in potentially get shot at hazardous duty pay, by the way, and lay waste to his house, and maybe we'll make a couple $100. Oh, it cost $5,000 to conduct the raid? Well, this is Bidenomics. This is government economics in general. This is why we need libertarianism. It doesn't even make fiscal sense. You can be a total brutal authoritarian, think that it's funny when small kids get burned up by flashbangs, and think that no-knock raids are great, and you just wish that they were pay-per-view. That's fine. Okay, you're really that far gone, that corrupted, so be it. At the very least, can you make it profitable in some way? Otherwise, you're offending everyone's sensibilities. I don't know why the left supports this either. Did Biden actually enjoy support from some people in the middle class for making it easier for them to get hammered by the IRS It is the least liked, or second least liked, DMV is always close, bureau in the entire U.S. government. And then the New York Times comes out and says, nope, there's never been an instance of corruption among those wonderful, brave patriots of the Internal Revenue Service. Lois Lerner never existed. I'm surprised they haven't Stalinized mention of her off of the visible surface internet by now. It's been happening a lot lately on Wikipedia and Reddit and places like that, so I wouldn't be surprised. Lois Lerner, article not found. No, it's not a noteworthy enough person. We found it to be not noteworthy, so we deleted it. That's about all. Peace out.